reopen the public hearing. So moved, Mr. President. Motion by Mr. Zelinski. Is there a second? Second by Mrs. O'Hara. All those in favor? Opposed? Ayes have it. The public hearing in the comprehensive plan is now open.
By way of an update, we did meet with the group engaged in Smithfield per the previous council's request, and I thought the workshop went very well. We have made some modifications to the comprehensive plan by including the community chapter, which was the intent all along, so I'm glad they came forward and worked with us on that. What we did do is place the chapter on the town website last Thursday, and we did that in track changes form so people can see exactly how items are being tweaked. And we did that for several other chapters in the comprehensive plan. So generally, too, what came out of the last potluck working session was a memorandum that basically captured a bunch of, you could call it a wish list item. There's a lot of programmatic ideas in there, and I felt rather than weaving those specifically into the chapter, we just included them, that memo at the end of that chapter. Everything like this is subject to funding, of course, but it's a good place to probably put ideas like that, as I said, to the council in the package. The other item of interest that's important here is speaking with Mr. Giozzi, when you look at the specific requirements you have to follow when you're addressing the zoning map itself, we've got a table in here. It had about 62 properties and areas that were listed for zone changes, which is quite extensive. That was from 06. So over the course of working with the planning board over the past year and a half, we whittled that down to about 22 or so, if I'm not mistaken, zone changes. Of that number, about 13 of them are zone changes to open space. The others are a down zoning of 2 others from RA to REA, which is a larger zone requirement. And then beyond that, there's some commercial zone changes to reflect the built environment, existing conditions, calling for more BH along the 146 artery there. But in talking with David, we felt that with specific notice having to be sent to those landowners who might be affected by a zone change, as well as the butters within 200 feet. I think we want to tackle the zoning map and that hearing process separately from the adoption of the comprehensive plan, just to make sure we're covered there. It doesn't mean you couldn't adopt this plan subject to having those hearings, which is why I provided you with a resolution should it go that way tonight. So that's really all I wanted to say on it, unless you all had questions for me. It's playing up on the web now.
We want to get into it before we have any questions of Mr. Kravitz. Yeah, I will. Sure. Since the public hearing time, we're going to see what people have to say, and then we'll have you come back up if the council has questions.
That's perfect.
Would anyone like to speak for the public hearing? Please come up and state your name and your address, please.
Hello, I'm Cynthia Roberts, 49 Week Street. So I just wanted to also acknowledge, because there's some new people on the town council, that we also had a planning board meeting. Well, it wasn't a planning board meeting, it was an Engaged North Smithfield meeting that the planning board kind of co-scheduled, like a 15-minute planning board meeting at the same time to take care of business, where we engaged between 20 and 25 residents before the November 10th meeting. And at that meeting, so the meeting Tom's referring to, the November 10th one, focused on the community chapter that was written back around 2015, 2016, with things added based on feedback that residents have given. And at that October 4th meeting, one of the things that came up, and I'm not sure where the best place is to try and have this codified, but the planning board came up with receptivity towards, and I think kind of it was their, I feel like they had the idea, but it was kind of like this joint idea to have an annual touch base in the town about touching base with the comprehensive plan for areas that might need revisions or being addressed. So there's like a rule or law that says you can amend the comp plan 4 times a year, and people in the group feel like we really want this to be a collective work in progress, because it's really only revised every 10 to 20 years, however often that is. And we feel like there might be things in the comprehensive plan that we want to live into and understand better as time goes by, and that we also want more accountability. And I mean that in a proactive way, like a mutual accountability between residents and governance about how the comprehensive plan is going. So I just want to say it for the record that we want to pursue whatever that annual meeting opportunity is, and whether it's something jointly with our town council and the planning board, again, to touch bases about the comprehensive plan, because not really enough people in the town know what it is and how it functions, and that we can have input in it. So I'm putting that out there. And then I also wanted to say, on behalf of a couple people engaged in our Smithfield who couldn't either be here or stay here tonight. So John Flaherty was fine and wanted it to be said that he appreciates the process that we had, and he technically reviewed as a resident a few of the chapters and was part of the meetings that gave the input. And like I said, he had another meeting tonight, so he said he would like to be on the record as supporting the new version. And then Alex Norton, who's been co-chairing the Engaged North Smithfield with me, couldn't stay, but she wanted to say that she appreciated the work that we've had together. And of course, I would echo that. Tom's been really great to work with, and others who have been supporting this process. The one question I have is, for the part about the zoning changes, you mentioned something about a workshop, and I just wanted to say that I know that there are other residents who would like to better understand the technical changes that are being proposed to happen in the comprehensive plan. And I feel like we need more education around that, with visuals and with people really understanding what those changes are, especially as they relate to Wardleberry Hill and other areas that already have proposed development that feels like contentious in its own way. And if we can have proactive education about that, I know that residents will feel better about that. I think that's mostly what I wanted to say, and just to also really emphasize our appreciation for working together, and that it was really positive, and we appreciate that a lot.
Dr. Roberts, pretty much everybody knows who you are, but just maybe for someone who doesn't know. Dr. Roberts served on the planning board, so she does have a lot of insight into this. And I want to thank you for your service then, but also with Engage North Smithfield. Thank you very much for the community aspect. I think, as long as I can remember, that piece was somewhat not engaged, but it is now. So I really want to thank you for that.
Thank you. And one other thing I wanted to say is that the community chapter is new, and most other communities don't have a community chapter. And Tom had the great idea of having that be the intro, Tom and the planning board, having that be the intro to the comp plan. And what I really like about that is it invites people into the document to actually think of it as a guiding document for the community's health. And so I'm grateful for that, and it is unique in Rhode Island.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak at the public hearing?
Council is going to hear this on any further dates. I would ask you to continue to date certain. Unless, is this going to be the last hearing?
Yeah. No, the zoning changes that Dr. Roberts alluded to in the table of zoning. I think, if we're going to pass a comprehensive plan, it's been how many years in the wings waiting? I don't think that continuing the public hearing is a bad idea. I would feel much better if we continue it to a date certain, probably in the year 2019, of course. And we do it maybe in February when we get a little caught up and we can actually have the time to contemplate these zoning changes in the table of implications. Will you have that done by then, Tom?
Yeah, it's the zoning piece of this is already completed. So what I was going to say, as Cynthia brought it up, when you actually adhere to notification requirements for the zoning map itself. We're effectively going to take the map of proposed zone changes. It begins on page 7 in the land use chapter. What we would do is actually put that entire table in something like a Valley Breeze, which lists every single parcel, the existing zoning, the proposed zoning, as well as the proposed zoning map in color. And it's going to be quite an advertisement, but that is going to flush out any interest people have and questions. And
Absolutely.
what does this mean? So, but that, I'm going to do virtually nothing with this until you have the next meeting. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm saying you could adopt the plan, subject to, of course, executing that notice requirement to address the zoning map changes too. But we have to send notices to every parcel in this list as well as the abutters within 200 feet. So that's going to be quite an exercise. But that's effectively going to be implementing this. You know, we're going to be having this conversation with the public about which districts are changing to which zone and why and what that means. And we'll be diving into the use table as people explore the uses within each district. All of those conversations will be had and can be had within a prescribed time that you adopt a comprehensive plan. It's one of the reasons why the solicitor, you know, you have, is it 18 months to bring your zoning map in conformance with the comp plan? You kind of don't, you want to watch out, you're not kind of holding the comp plan approval hostage to the zoning. When you can execute the zoning map change, some may drop out when we go through that process, which is fine, and then we'll just,
Some just be added.
yeah.
Can I ask a quick question? Has any notice been given to the water recharge areas in this town? You think of the water, what we have, I'm going to say water, I don't want to say Waterbury or Bay Area or whatever, but there's other areas, and there's, which I recently just educated myself about, is the recharge areas, which can be affected, which will affect the major areas.
There are public and private water supply areas. Notice was sent to adjacent towns all around.
But within our town, we have some very iffy areas where businesses shouldn't even be over this.
Yeah, it's posted in accordance with the state requirements. It was sent to statewide planning. They're responsible to send to Department of Health. We're covered on the comprehensive plan notification process, for what we've been holding open now for several months. When we address the zoning map notice, those same requirements are in there. Yes, we have to send to all public water supplies, within 2,000 feet. It's all specified in the head
Or
section.
what can even be held
Yeah, it's-
over these water charge areas, what businesses can be there?
Yeah, the use table will be examined. Should someone from a water supply have a question about that, or a resident? The key section in state law is 452453. That goes through all of your adoption, notice and hearing requirements for both text in your zoning ordinance as well as map changes. So it's all right in there if you want to read that section.
Mr. Pratt, the zone change map. Are we getting into a chicken and the egg type of thing that if we adopt the comp plan, that can be amended, but if you're not going to change that zone map until we adopt it, is it one of,
You
we're
can't
getting
change
into that argument
You
now?
can't adopt the zoning map that we're proposing until we go through that hearing process that requires a specific notice and such. That's generally how it works.
So that map wouldn't be adopted, that map would be excluded if we adopted the comp plan tonight.
Right, subject to, you could say subject to the public hearing process in accordance with the statute to adopt the zoning map.
Any other questions of Mr. Kravitz? I'd look for a motion to close the public hearing then.
Make-
I got a question.
Go to the podium, please.
It just one thing.
What'd you stop?
Pacheco, 36 Old Smithfield Road, their water recharge area. Are there going to be any specifications for people building in and around a water recharge area?
There's already specifications, they're not.
There are things in this comp plan in regards to water recharge area.
In the old one it was.
Yeah,
Oh, shit.
excuse me, yeah.
Oh, shit.
There's an aquifer overlay zone on the books already in the zoning code, that's not gonna change. But as far as the map itself, changing a distance, a district from, let's say, MU1 to MU2, that might be for just a couple of differences in the use table. There are things like that, but nothing,
That's
we're not changing any,
specific.
we're not changing any notifications that relate to groundwater protection, so that's what you're asking.
Well, if someone was desiring to build in that area, would there be any, specifications to take care of it? To ensure that it stays a water recharge area?
Yeah, those regulations are in place today, they'll be in place after.
That's state law.
Yeah, it's already in the zoning map.
Just a thought. Sure.
The only issue I wanted to raise, maybe I didn't understand Tom before, is it's one thing to approve the comp plan subject to the zone review process, because the law says you have to change your zoning within 18 months, but if you're going to end up changing something in that zone map, then you're going to be amending the comp plan again.
And we can do that 4 times a year.
Right, so that's what's going to end up happening. It's going to be an amendment.
That would be a very easy process to do at that point.
All right, so that, I just want you to be aware that you'll be amending the comp plan.
I wanted to comment on that. In essence, what you're doing, if I'm understanding what Mr. Kravitz has offered, is that you're adopting a comp plan with a plan to look at the zone, which is quite sensible.
We want to make sure we get the notification right, comprehensive. That's important for the zone map change.
Anyone else?
I have a clarifying question.
I just want to understand from a procedural point of view, if the comp plan is adopted tonight with the provision that the zoning map will be heard, or whatever the term would be, does that mean that the new, so-called new zoning is in effect, or it's not in effect until it's separately workshopped or heard?
Right, exactly. The new zoning map wouldn't become effective until you go through that hearing process. You'd still be working by the existing map.
Because just as a resident who's been engaging on this, that sounds reasonable to me, because if it's not, that part's not being adopted and that's the one remaining part that people have, just want to understand better and be able to give more educated input, then I support that. That sounds very reasonable to me from that perspective.
There is a concern. If we're going to accept the comp plan and work on the zoning use tables, there could be a flurry of activity. Do you see, I know you're not a clairvoyant, you're not a soothsayer, but are there areas where someone may be prodded to move quickly if they look at a difference in the zone tables? In essence, if the existing zoning table is more attractive to someone who wants to develop, do you see any of the zone use tables changing where it might be an impetus for people to start moving quickly?
You could always address that stuff on the fly too, right? What if somebody was attracted to the district that you were going to change to? You know, you could make your findings on the comp plan that you would have adopted previously, even though you hadn't gotten to the zone change process yet. Kind of like the Rousseau case, you can always take it on a case-by-case basis while you're doing this. You could make findings with consistency for the comprehensive plan with your existing zoning ordinance that you're working by, or the new one that you hope to have adopted after you get through the process, should an applicant come forward within that time frame.
Okay.
You know,
I think, okay.
if that makes sense. What we're really going to do is, if you were to approve the resolution tonight that you have, I'm just going to take the comp plan and get it. I can get it to the state at least and let them start their review process.
Start the process.
And I'm not going to waste any time on the notification for the zone map. As soon as you want me back here, we can notify people and do that right away. I'm not going to sit on it for 18 months. I can do this in 2 months, easily.
Dr. Roberts, how do you
I
feel
do
about
have this one more comment. Thanks.
It's not actually about that particular, but in general, a comment that came up quite a bit during our conversations about the community chapter is that residents want to see development that has the residents in mind, and we have discussed among ourselves, and I don't think many people would disagree, that development in this community is usually driven by the developers, and we would like to see a difference in that because often it seems like we are feeling somehow under pressure to do what the developers want. And we saw from our engagement process on the comprehensive plan that residents are very interested in development and want to have a say in how the community is run. But I think a lot of people don't see these kinds of meetings as the place to do that. And that was part of what we talked about when the planning board said, let's have an annual meeting, like a friendly meeting, to talk about the comp plan and review it and say, how are we doing well, how are we not doing well? So I just would like to say out loud that I would like to see more engagement around development issues because usually the people who show up are somehow involved with whatever the process is and not the broader community. So often it feels like what happens is the development is for a small number of people and not with the community in mind. And I feel like that's where the community chapter might play a role because many of us just said it's so common sense that this community should be for the people who live here, but development-wise it often doesn't feel that way. And one of the examples that someone said tonight is that they sort of disagreed with a part of the community chapter that said we have a lot of parks and recreational spaces in this town. That people want more of that, but we don't necessarily feel like we have activated parks in this community. So people want more than just more things being built. They want public spaces to use together in more ways than just organized sports. So I would like to see more community benefit tied into the kind of development